guys, and welcome back to the Cruel Room. We're here once again in this wonderful ranty room for all things Formula 1. And it was the Eifel Grand Prix this weekend, hosted at the Nürburgring. The first time Nürburgring's been on the calendar since 2013. And what could be said? A welcome return, of course, and an okay race. Wasn't the most exciting race we've had this season, but it was a good one, wasn't it? It was enjoyable. There was a lot of things going on there. The safety car period at the end potentially caused a different podium finisher to what would have been had the safety car not come out, but we're going to get through all that in a short while. If you've never seen this series before, of course, I'm going to rate the drivers out of a possible of 10 points, maximum of 10. If you do particularly badly, I can score you all the way down to 0. But there's limitations and permutations to this series, of course, which is if you have a particularly good race, I can award you bonus points on top of the 10, and I can also award you minus points below the 0. It's just how it works, isn't it? It's called the Cruel Room for a reason. So, of course, we're going to kick things off with the race winner, which was Lewis Hamilton. Extends his championship table lead now to 70 points, equals Michael Schumacher's record of 91 wins. Absolutely fantastic stuff for Lewis Hamilton. Brilliant job, well done. But we're going to evaluate the race on its own merits. And what could be said? He didn't get pole this weekend, did he? Ended up 2 tenths behind his teammate, a bit cautious in those conditions at the end of the qualifying session. And Bottas got the better of him, almost lost out to Verstappen as well, it's worth noticing. But Verstappen lost 2 tenths in that final sector, and if it wasn't for that, Verstappen would have been potentially second, maybe scraping pole, but I think that would have been a bit of a stretch. But nonetheless, for Lewis Hamilton, qualified P2 off the line, it looked like he was going to get first place. He forced Valtteri Bottas wide into turn 1, and you thought, that's it, he's got it, job done. But oh no, Valtteri Bottas came back, attacked and maintained P1, and then within the first few laps he was 2 seconds up the road and out of DRS zone. So you thought, okay, going to be an interesting one, isn't it? And it was interesting up until the lap where Valtteri Bottas decided we're going to lock up at turn 1, flat spot his tyre and give Hamilton the lead. Of course, then we had a brief virtual safety car period and Hamilton just won the race from there. Safety car wasn't an issue, Verstappen wasn't fast enough to attack him, and of course Valtteri Bottas retired. So his only competition was out of the race. And a very lonely, easy win from there, really. So once Bottas made that mistake and once Bottas broke down, which all happened in the first 10-11 laps, was it? Then that was it. Jobs are good and easy win. Well done, Hamilton. So overall for this race, for Lewis Hamilton, wasn't his best race, was it? It wasn't the most exciting, most dominant we've ever seen from him. So for that reason, it's going to be 7 points. 7 points to Lewis Hamilton. Didn't qualify too well, didn't get pole, and wasn't looking like he was going to win the race up until Bottas fucked his own race up and broke down. So, you know, maybe that was punishment for Bottas. Mercedes turned his engine off just to say, oh yeah, that's punishment for getting pole and winning last time out. Naughty Valtteri. But yeah, 7 points to Lewis Hamilton. And then, of course, we come to Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. It looked like in the Saturday we had potential that the Red Bulls could mix it up with the Mercedes. Well, I say Red Bulls, I mean Verstappen. But in the end, in the race, it just didn't come to fruition. So close in qualifying, as mentioned, that he almost got into P2, perhaps pole position as well. He was looking on course for that, but made a slight mistake in the final sector, which cost him any chance of getting one of the Mercedes. And yeah, unfortunately, P3 was the best he could get. In the race, of course, he was in P3 quite happily. Came under pressure from Ricciardo at one stage in the race early on, and almost lost out there. And then Bottas made his mistake and then broke down, and then it was just an easy P2 from there. Didn't have the measure of Hamilton at all. The Red Bull nor Max Verstappen could do anything about it, unfortunately. So short and sweet for Verstappen. I'm going to score him the same as Hamilton. It's going to be 7 points. Again, the qualifying effort could have been better. It could have been P2 without a doubt, especially because Hamilton was cautious on his qualifying lap. And in the race, nothing he could have done really. But yeah, I think he'd have kept P2 if Bottas hadn't have broke down, because he lost so much time during the virtual safety car period because Bottas pitted before that. So I think maybe we'd have seen a P2 regardless this weekend and Bottas would have been third, but we're never going to know. But overall, 7 points to Max Verstappen. And then we come to Daniel Ricciardo, the Honey Badger. After looking so close for a couple of races this year so far, it looked like he might actually get a podium. And this time he finally did. He finally did it. He got P3 and it was so close, and it was on tenterhooks for 1 point because had Norris not retired and caused a safety car, then maybe, just maybe, Perez would have got him. It was gaining 7-8 tenths a lap, was Perez on Ricciardo. 14 laps left with a 10-second gap, so it'd have been tight, it'd have been very tight, but would Ricciardo's tyres have dropped off? Potentially, because they'd have done 44 laps had he gone to the race distance on the tyres he was on, as Perez was catching on much fresher tyres. So we potentially lost an exciting battle there for the podium, because obviously both had a free pit stop when the safety car came out for Perez and, of course, Ricciardo. But nonetheless, a fantastic job by Daniel Ricciardo. Qualifying well as well in P6, I think it was in the end. So a solid job, and he just drove forward and was looking on course easily for P4. And that crucial move was when he got past Leclerc in the early stages of the race. Had it not been for that, and if it had been bottled up behind him, I think Perez could have potentially got him just on the road on merit, let alone safety cars and catching up at the end. I think Perez would have been ahead without that. So fair play to Daniel Ricciardo for that. And absolutely unbelievable race. So for that reason, I could score him no less than 10 points. It's going to be a full 10 points for Daniel Ricciardo. And duly deserved, like I mentioned, that Ricciardo-Renault combination, ever since Spain, where they had a terrible race, from then on, it's looked like they've had potential a couple of times, Mugello especially, where they could have got podiums but just missed out. So, yeah, fair play to Daniel Ricciardo and fair play to Renault. A full 10 points, credit deserved. Well done to Daniel Ricciardo. And then it's time for Sergio Perez, and after an okay qualifying P9, it looked like the Racing Point didn't have the pace around the Nürburgring as in previous years, all those years ago, back in the Force India guys, of course. And in the race, at the start of the race, it didn't look brilliant, did it? But the race came to them after they pitted on the virtual safety car period, gained a chunk of time there, and eventually nipped through on the likes of Leclerc. And P4 in the end, pushing for P3, fantastic effort overall. Managed to get the better of course, the hailing McLaren of Lando Norris and Sainz as well. Sainz was struggling from a lot of front graining with the new aero package and causing the front tyres to understeer. So, of course, lost time in the end to the Renaults and the Racing Point of Sergio Perez. And yeah, a fantastic race by Sergio. It's a shame he didn't get the chance to catch up to Ricciardo like he should have done with the much fresher tyres. Force India Racing Point are normally known for their strategic masterclasses and able to eke the most out of the tyres. And they proved it this weekend with Hulkenberg, of course, doing 30 laps on the softs before pitting, and he ended up in the points. We'll get to him in a minute. And, of course, Perez on much fresher tyres. So Daniel Ricciardo looked like it could have potentially been a P3, but nonetheless a solid 12 points in a difficult weekend as Lance Stroll is not racing, and we wish Lance Stroll a get well soon, and we hope to see him next time out at Portimao, of course, in Portugal. But yeah, a difficult weekend when you've got all that going on, and for Perez to deliver after a relatively poor qualifying in P9, a P4 finish, fantastic result. So for that reason, it's going to be 9 points to Sergio Perez. I'm only not scoring him a full 10 because I think he deserved the podium this weekend. No fault of his own, and of course no fault of the Racing Point team, but I'd have just loved to have seen it. Sergio Perez was certainly deserving, but 9 points, full credit to Sergio Perez. These last couple of races he has been really impressive. So well done Sergio, thoroughly deserved P4 and 9 points on the Cruel Room. Then it's time for Carlos Sainz in the lone McLaren at the end there. Sadly, Norris having engine issues causing a late safety car. As mentioned, Sainz was struggling from front graining, so had a lot of understeer on the tyres and struggled to make them last. And to come home in P5, 10 points on the board is a solid enough effort. Unfortunately, McLaren have now lost out to Racing Point in the P3 constructor standings, which is not what they'd have wanted. But damage limitation with, of course, 5th place and 10 points on the board. It was the best he could have done realistically, and especially with Lando going out as well, once Lando's issues has started to arise. And yeah, brilliant drive by Carlos Sainz, and for that reason it's going to be 8 points. 8 points to Carlos Sainz. It's a worthy effort, a great drive, but not as impressive as, of course, Perez and Ricciardo ahead. When that mid-pack is so tight for that P3 in the Constructors, it's mental, isn't it? We're calling it P3 in the Constructors and mid-pack now. Of course, Red Bull are away and gone, Mercedes are away and gone. But when you finish behind the cars that you're racing around, I can't give you full points. They had a better weekend this weekend overall. Yes, it was front graining issues, more a team fault. But in the end, 8 points. I'm not taking anything away from Carlos Sainz this weekend. That was a top job. So, fair play, Carlos Sainz. And then we come to Pierre Gasly once again in P6, having some fantastic battles and drives up there. He went on the hard tyre in part of the race, and it didn't look to be working out the best. So it looked like at one stage he was not going to be getting points. The AlphaTauri struggled in qualifying, didn't get through into Q3 for the first time in quite a while. That one car didn't get through anyway. And they lined up 12th and 13th. Then in the race at the start, they dropped down to 14th and 15th. And it just looked like it was going to be such a difficult weekend for the pair of them. And in the end, Gasly just appeared from nowhere. Benefited, I definitely believe, from the virtual safety car period because he didn't pit prior to that. So gained a lot of time on the cars that pitted prior. And then in the race, from then on, he just picked his way up, picked his way through. We had some cracking overtakes on the likes of Leclerc and Vettel. And did a fantastic job, and once again we're seeing Gasly showing his true colours again. Had a battle with Albon as well, of course, when Albon tried to get through and then locked his second set of tyres up, but we'll go into him later. And overall, Gasly, yeah, a fantastic drive. So Pierre Gasly is going to be another solid 8 points on the board. Fantastic effort. I don't think he could have done much better. Overall, a cracking result. So yeah, 8 points to Pierre Gasly. And then it's time for Charles Leclerc, of course, in the Ferrari. And after a fantastic qualifying effort in P4, splitting the Red Bulls, no surprises there. Yeah, a brilliant effort. A brilliant effort in qualifying. In the race, it looked to be a strong start, definitely maintaining that P4 before Ricciardo eventually slipped through. And in the race, yeah, Ferrari's strategy wasn't the best. But overall, Leclerc got the maximum he could out of the car to finish P7 and picking up 6 points. AlphaTauri gaining a couple more points, of course, on the Ferrari team, though, for that P6 in the Constructors. So that's going to be a tight battle as the season goes on. This is mental, isn't it? Ferrari are doing so bad that we're praising Leclerc for a P4 qualifying and P7 finish. Mental stuff, absolutely mental. So for Charles Leclerc, short and sweet, I'm going to score him 7.5 points this weekend. It was a solid weekend, definitely. I'd have just liked to have seen him maybe keep ahead of Sainz, especially with his front graining issues, and maybe Gasly. You know, an AlphaTauri overtaking a Ferrari. Yeah, it's not great, is it? I know the car is bad, but again, I'm not taking anything away from Leclerc's drive. I just think there was a lot more drivers having better weekends this weekend that Leclerc doesn't deserve anymore. I thought 7 was too harsh and 8 was just a tad too high considering what Gasly and Sainz did. So overall, 7.5 I think is fair for Charles. And then it's time for Nico Hulkenberg. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's the Super Sub. He's back once again. Yeah, this was even more on spec than the previous time at Silverstone, of course, on the 70th anniversary race, because he was having a coffee at 11 o'clock on the morning of Saturday with a friend, enjoying himself, getting ready for commentating over the weekend and doing some stuff for RTL, the channel, and doing some filming. And then he got a phone call from Otmar and said, "Hi Nico, could you come to Nürburgring right now, please, honey? Yeah, you're taking over from Stroll this time. He's got a bout of illness." And he just arrived. He missed practice. I mean, not that they had FP1 or FP2 anyway, but he missed FP3. And then qualifying, he just had to do whatever he could. He qualified last, and you can't take anything away from him for that at all, can you? 4/10 off getting through into Q2, which is a mighty effort to say he only had 3 flying laps at it, but cracking job nonetheless. And in the race, he was doing a really good job. He got up to 16th before any of the dramas and calamities for people retiring. And then as the retirements came, he just kept picking off the places. Eventually got ahead of the likes of the Haas's, of course, and the Alfa Romeos, who was racing round with at the time. And overall, I think realistically, had it not been for the retirements of such as Ocon, Albon and Bottas, we'd have been looking around 12th. Let's be fair on that. We'd have been looking around the 12th place mark. But nonetheless, you know, an absolutely fantastic effort to finish P12 had those cars not retired. But here he is in the points, PA, a fantastic job, 4 points on the board. And I noticed a stat from one of the Autosport people that had worked it all out. I mean, it's not difficult to work out, is it? But that Nico Hulkenberg in the last 7 races has scored more points than Sebastian Vettel in the last 7. That is mad, isn't it? Considering Hulkenberg's only been able to do 2 of the 3 he was signed up to do. He's picked up 10 points compared to Sebastian Vettel's 8, which is just unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable. So yeah, Nico Hulkenberg, the Super Sub. I've gone on about him far too much, but of course, what is it going to be? It's going to be a full 10 points, isn't it? And he thoroughly deserves that. A full 10 points for what he's done for the Racing Point team. Picking up 10 points that necessarily they wouldn't have got, so fair play. Absolutely unbelievable. 4 points on the board this weekend, of course, and a top job, Nico Hulkenberg. 10 points. And then it's time for Romain Grosjean. What could be said about his race weekend? Well, knocked out in Q1. His teammate out-qualified him, just scraping into Q2. In the race, it looked to be lonely. He ended up last at one stage in the really early stages. And what happened was Kimi Räikkönen had gone off, and as he was going around the corner, a gravel flicked up and hit his hand, and he believes he's broken his finger. At the time of recording, I don't know if it is actually broken. I'm doubting it, but I think it'll definitely be swollen and jarred and not feeling up to the best. So, yeah, his index finger was really struggling. And, it looked like, we're probably going to be seeing a retirement here if it was getting worse. But Haas didn't hear anything more of him. And in the end, he ended up finishing P9. And 2 points on the board. His first 2 points this season, which is a fantastic effort. Grosjean's been looking strong these last few races, without a doubt. He benefited from the virtual safety car. He benefited from the safety car period as well, because they elected not to stop him. He was on the hard tyres already. And they thought, let's go for it. Let's give it a try like they did in Hungary. Of course, and they went, let's just go for it, give it a try, let's not pit him, let's jump ahead of all the cars and see where we end up. So he was 7th briefly, and then the likes of course, Hulkenberg got through and Charles Leclerc got through on him, but maintaining P9, staying ahead of Giovinazzi and Sebastian Vettel. So a fantastic effort by Romain Grosjean, and especially dealing with that finger injury as well. He's fighting for his seat in Formula 1 without a doubt, and this proves that he has got some worth. I think this has been one of his best seasons for a long time, it must be said. He had a difficult start with a few spins, as always, at the start of the season, but he's eyeing that out, and he's looking really strong now. So, again, Romain Grosjean, it's a full 10 points. It's a full 10 points. It's not so cruel, is it? But we're getting there, don't worry. I can't say anything less than a full 10 points for Romain Grosjean. And even without the finger injury, it'd have been 10 points. So, yeah, fair play, Romain Grosjean. And then it's time for Antonio Giovinazzi. The Italian stallion once again picking up one solitary World Championship point, finishing in P10. Do you know what? Amazing. I've said it last race that he was my driver of the day, and this race is proving to be my driver of the day as well. Because let's not forget, it was his first Q2 appearance in Formula 1 this season, qualifying P14 in the end, so ahead of K-Mag, who scraped through into Q2 as well. Fantastic effort. In the race, for the most part, he was running around in P11. He was running around, of course, in P11 for most of the race. If you took note of that, it was just on the cusp of points, and this is when all 20 cars were still running. So this is prior to any of the other retirements. He had some good pace. Then the pit stops came. He ended up pitting prior to the virtual safety car period, which is what cost him, and he ended up dropping around to about 14th, 15th. And then as the race progressed, he ended up climbing his way back through the field again. He elected to pit under the safety car, and that helped him gain the places. Fair play to Antonio Giovinazzi for picking up one solitary World Championship point when his seat is incredibly under threat. A lot of people are saying Nikita Mazepin's paid for a drive for Alfa Romeo or Haas or something, and then they're saying Robert Schwartzman's got Alfa Romeo and they're keeping Kimi. It's all up in the air, but either way, Antonio is not mentioned. And based on these last two race performances, without a doubt, Giovinazzi deserves a seat. But basically, over the overall championship so far this season, it's looking difficult, isn't it? So, he's took another point. Fair play to Alfa Romeo. They needed that, especially with Haas scoring 2. They needed to maintain that gap. So, well done to them. And Antonio Giovinazzi, it's going to be a full 11 points. I'm scoring him a bonus point. And that bonus point is because his neck is really on the line this season, and I think he did a credible job to get into Q2 and also maintain the pace he had. Didn't benefit from the safety cars and the virtual safety cars like others did, but still came through to score a point and keep Sebastian Vettel behind him. Fantastic effort. Well done, Antonio. And then we come to Sebastian Vettel, and it's always going to be one of them, isn't it? It's been a while, but you spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record, baby, right round, round, round. We had a spin in FP3, and then we had a spin in the race, yeah. Didn't go too well for him, did it? Let's be honest. Short and sweet for Sebastian Vettel. I'm fed up with him. I really am. I'm fed up with him just as much as he's fed up with Ferrari. I'm starting to doubt his actual credibility of racing around with Ferrari now. I know it sounds a bit harsh, but does anyone else think that he's just being bad on purpose now so he can just help Racing Point get more points for the championship? Because he's going there next year, isn't he, when it becomes at Aston Martin? So, I don't know. Call me the cynic and call me the, you know, whatever you want to call me. A lot of people call me a twat, but, you know. But yeah, you know, just call me whatever you like with that. But I think there's got to be some truth in that, because there's no way he's this bad. And there's no way that car is that bad either, because Leclerc's making it work. And I know Leclerc's got a different mindset because he's got a 14,000-year contract with Ferrari, so he has to push them forward. But surely Vettel would want to just do it for himself, scoring points. And he rocked up behind Giovinazzi and Grosjean on fresher tyres, and everyone was looking, going, oh yeah, I'll get them, P9, he'll get some points. And he just didn't. He just didn't do it. So I don't know if there's something in that or not. But either way, it's -5 points for Sebastian Vettel. And he's annoying me just as much as Bottas is annoying me, to be honest. So, yeah, -5 for Vettel. And it's time for Kimi Raikkonen. After achieving 323 Grand Prix starts, the most of any other driver in Formula One's history. Well done to him for that, but the race didn't go too well, did it? Let's be honest. Qualifying P19, that's not brilliant. Only just ahead of Hulkenberg, the super sub, who lined up 20th. And then in the race, he clattered into George Russell, taking him out of the race, firmly taking him out of the race as well. Then it looked to have all come undone. He served the 10-second stop-go penalty in the end as a result of the second pit stop. And then the race came to him later on in the race as he was battling around with Vettel, Giovinazzi, and ended up P12. So in the end, it's not a bad result for Alfa Romeo. But yeah, not an impressive race by his standards. So 4 points I'm going to award Kimi Raikkonen. Just the 4 points. I'd have probably been a bit more harsher on him had he not achieved 323 Grand Prix starts. But, you know, that's just me. I like Kimi, but 4 points is all I can award him for that. He was really outshone by his teammate this weekend. And then we come to K-Mag, Kevin Magnussen. And what could be said for his race? A bit of a strange one. Didn't really see much of him, I've got to be honest. So I'm just trying to analyse it the best I can. But overall, he had a good start off the line. I think he ended up in P13 after starting P15, so into Q2, good effort. And then, unfortunately, in the race, it all came undone. He didn't benefit from the virtual safety car, I don't believe. And then, in the race, I don't think he pitted again at the safety car point. They pushed the Hassers up there as much as they could up the order and just thought, let's go for track position over pitting. And eventually, I think K-Mag's tyres just wore away. And there he was down in P13 after getting as high as 10th at one stage. So, yeah, points were a bigger stretch for him than they were for Grosjean. Grosjean just getting the better of him. And then in the race, he tumbled down. So, yeah, an unfortunate one for K-Mag, without a doubt. So that's why I'm going to award him 6 points. I don't think it was a brilliant race by him. Seeing what Grosjean did, of course, you know, just one of those things. I can't award him any decent points for that. But overall, an okay race by him. So 6 points, just better than average for K-Mag. Then we come to Nicholas Latifi, and a fairly lonely race for him in the early stages of the race once again. I say lonely, but you know what I mean. He wasn't really racing round in the points. He was just kind of half-arse battling with the likes of Raikkonen and his teammate George. Then the latter stages of the race after that safety car period, I don't know if anyone else was watching the screen, but it kept going, Latifi, Kvyat, Kvyat, Latifi, Latifi, Kvyat. They're having a good ding-dong battle there for 14th place. Towards the end of the race, of course, after that safety car period. But overall, Latifi wasn't going to be getting points. I think he got as high as 12th at one stage prior to everyone pitting. So he was never in the mix for the points. Of course, they've lost out even more now, Williams. That gap is increased from 1 and 4 points to 5 and 3 points over Alfa Romeo and Haas, while Williams still remain on 0. So an unfortunate race this weekend for them to lose out on that, but they just really didn't have the pace, did they? Especially Latifi. So Latifi, I'm going to award him a middle of the road 5 points. It was nothing he did wrong this weekend. The car just didn't have the pace. Outqualified Kimi Raikkonen and, of course, Hulkenberg, the super sub. Didn't get the measure of his teammate once again, though. But yeah, overall, middle of the road, 5 points to Nicholas Latifi. And then, as mentioned, his sparring partner, Danny Kvyat. And again, short and sweet with Danny Kvyat. I don't blame him at all this weekend for him finishing in 15th place and the last of the runners. He had his nose took off by, of course, Alex Albon, who'd made the move stick. All he had to do was just stay there, and he just came across and took his front wing off, having to do a whole lap with no front wing. And also the front wing obviously did damage to the barge boards and things underneath, because the wing went underneath the car and then got stuck for a little bit and then eventually fired off down the start-finish straight. So I'm convinced there was more than just that front wing damage to Kvyat's car. I don't think it was 100% after they stuck the new nose on it anyway. He benefited, of course, from the safety car coming out, because that meant that every car could unlap itself and regroup. Without that, he was about 30 seconds behind Latifi. In the end, didn't get the measure of him, but had a good battle nonetheless. And it's a middle of the road, 5 points to Danny Kvyat. His potential was there this weekend. He was racing around with Gasly. They both dropped down together off the start and were both looking to be climbing up the order again. When it all went wrong for Kvyat. So I don't blame him at all. He did make that mistake to cause Albon to take his nose off, but he didn't deserve his nose getting taken off for that. Albon had the job done, but just fucked up. So, unfortunate there. So yeah, 5 points to Danny Kvyat, a middle of the road. And then we come to the 5 retirements, of course, and we're kicking off with the last of the retirements that caused that late safety car period, Lando Norris. Again, it's going to be short and sweet for Lando. The frustration was clear to see over the team radio. A potential podium went begging for him this weekend. Might have been a bit of a stretch with the pace of the Racing Point and Renault towards the end there. But nonetheless, yeah, a disappointing weekend for Lando Norris. He was doing the best job he could to manage the engine issue that he had. He was having to press all these buttons down straight to try and get something to work, because it was apparently a sensor issue. And then eventually the engine cut out. And that was that. So, yeah, I'm going to award Lando Norris a fighting 7 points. I think he drove the best job he could with the race car he had. And it was ailing for quite a while before it eventually broke down. And that's going to be looking rough for the end of the season now, isn't it? That was a new power unit. And if it's that that's given way, we saw the bodywork melting and burning itself. So, fingers crossed, it's something that's just failed, and it's not one of the major components that could lead to penalties further into the season. Otherwise, that's just really going to add salt into the wounds. After what was looking like a strong race for him and McLaren, all went begging, not all his own doing. So yeah, 7 points to Lando Norris. A fighting effort there, buddy. Unfortunate to miss out at the end there with a retirement that wasn't your fault. And then we come to the curious case of Alexander Albon. Alex. 5th in qualifying, not too bad. I'm not going to slag him off for that. But then in the race, locked up his first set of tyres, pitted for some more, and then locked up for the second set of tyres. Took Kvyat's front wing off, and then came into the pits to obviously pit the car. Well, park the car really. Apparently engine issues, but was there engine issues? I don't think there was. There was no prior conversation. Even Paul Di Resta was looking at the team radio chat, listening in, and he said that they'd not said anything about there being an engine issue on the radio at all. I think once he took Kvyat's nose off and then almost ran into the side of Gasly, and then said they're racing me too hard, these guys. I think Helmut Marko probably got onto the phone to Christian and went, fucking park him, get rid. Yeah, very difficult race by Alex Albon, and I'm losing sympathy for him now, I really am. It's called the cruel room, like I mentioned last time out. Of course, I was being sympathetic in previous races. This time it's just a 0 again. It's a 0. How can I score that once again? He'd ruined his race. 2 flat-spotted tyres. He'd have had to pit again before that retirement really just summed it up. And taking Kvyat's front wing off. I can't score points for that. So yeah, 0, Alex Albon. And then we come to Esteban Ocon. Unfortunate hydraulic issue believed. He ended up conking out in the pit lane. He didn't even make it back to his pit garage. Yeah, again, a short and sweet one for him, really. It was an okay race by him. He was running around in around 8th, whereas Ricciardo was chomping at the bit, trying to get past Leclerc, and eventually did. And Ocon retired from 8th, so it wasn't going to be an impressive race. Points were definitely possible, and with the likes of Bottas retiring, Albon retiring, it could have maybe got up to about 6th or 5th in the race in the end, so could have been a strong points haul, but the race we saw of him wasn't anything special once again, and Ricciardo was doing all the hard work and grafting to get that podium. So overall it's going to be 4 points for Esteban Ocon. Couldn't rate his race fairly, but judging on what we did see of him, it wasn't looking like he was matching Ricciardo, which is why he scores slightly less than half. Unfortunate there for Esteban Ocon, but that's how it is. So 4 points to Ocon. And then we come to Valtteri Bottas. Oh, Valtteri. We took pole. I was quite surprised by that, I've got to be honest. Then in the race, we fought Hamilton, and I thought, oh, he's just probably going to pussy out of it and stay second. But no, he ended up taking first back, and I thought, oh, well done. Well done. Then it was 2 seconds clear up the road, and then he decided he was going to lock up, flat spot his tyres, ruin his race. Drove wide, let Hamilton through, let Verstappen through, pitted, put a new set of tyres on, virtual safety car came out, which just ruined his race even more. And yeah, then he broke down. You know what? The breakdown wasn't his fault, and that's just racing and blah, 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 blah. I don't care. But he'd ruined his own race. He'd ruined his own race at that point. He was only getting third anyway. The virtual safety car coming out, its own stupid fault for flat spotting your tyres and having to pit when you didn't need to because you locked up and ruined your own race. So he'd have been third this weekend. You know what? It's -10. -10 for Bottas. I'm just sick of him. I really am just sick of him. He had a race lead there of 2 seconds over Hamilton. And he blew it. He blew it. If the car had broken down in first place, then yeah, that's just how, that's life, isn't it? That's unfortunate. I'd have probably awarded him a solid 8 or 9 points for the race weekend he had up to that point. But that were crap. That were crap again. So yeah, for Bottas, you'd have been better off breaking down before I knew that you were doing shit. So yeah, -10 to Bottas. Last but by no means least is, of course, George Russell. And what a shame for George, just taken out and obliterated by Kimi Raikkonen. And that was that, unfortunately. His race didn't last long. He out-qualified Latifi again, was out racing Latifi and was racing with the likes of the Alfa Romeos when it all went Pete Tong. And yeah, that's a shame. It's racing, isn't it? So it was short and sweet for George Russell, a middle of the road, 5 points once again to him. Unfortunate. So there you go, guys. That was the Cruel Room for the Nürburgring Grand Prix, the Eifel Grand Prix, I should say. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Have I scored any drivers too high, any too low? The results of the championship, of course, are on the board now. There you go. That's the Cruel Room Championship leaderboard. Let me know where your favourite driver is. Is there any surprises up there, down there? I don't keep a track of it. Matthew D'Souza does. His channel's in the link in the description below. If it wasn't for him, this series would have no meaning whatsoever, whereas this time it does at least have a bit of meaning, but it still doesn't matter, if that makes sense. But yeah, thanks to Matthew D'Souza for doing the maths and keeping a track of everything, because I just score the drivers and then forget what I score them. So yeah, big thanks to him. So as always, thank you so much for watching, guys. And yeah, look forward to seeing you for the next one, which is at Portimao, is it? In Portugal. I think it's Portimao. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I'll see you for that one. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and much love.